Welcome, y'all. It's Wes with DIY Food Plot Pro. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's episode, we're going to talk about how we're going to interseed our fall food plot mixtures into our standing soybeans, into our standing corn, any of our other spring or summer food plots that we grew for whitetails. DIY Food Plot Pro is sponsored by Aircrow LLC, the Plot Protector Pro. Keep whitetails and other animals out of your food plots with the Plot Protector Pro. My name is Wes. I run the channel DIY Food Plot Pro. I've got a Bachelor of Science in Agronomy. I farm for a living, and I've got a 2,900 acre whitetail deer hunting outfitter in Western Kentucky where we cannot bait. So we rely heavily on these food plots that I produce on the channel to hunt and harvest the whitetails that we're blessed to hunt here in Western Kentucky. We're standing in a corner of a soybean food plot, and it doesn't look phenomenal. It doesn't look bad. These soybeans are around knee high right here. We've got a thin stand, which is to be expected. We're in high density deer zone, so a corner of a food plot is almost always going to get wiped out. This spot actually looks pretty decent. Soybeans are going to get some pods on them. It looks like they're starting to flower here, and we've got a little bit of size to these soybeans. The next step in this process for me is going to be the adding of the fall food plots. As you can see behind me, we have seed to soil contact easy enough. That's because I went in 2 weeks ago and I sprayed these plots with Roundup to clean all this back up. There was quite a bit of grass in here that was growing. These are Roundup ready soybeans. So I went in here and sprayed this grass and I got it killed off. So now we have plenty of room to plant our fall food plots in and amongst these soybeans and add some diversity to this food plot. I love mixes. I don't love mixes in the spring and the summertime. I much prefer to plant a single monocrop in the spring, and then I add to those monocrops in the fall, and I add all my diversification to them. So I really like that. That has worked really, really well for me in the past doing it this way. But there are certain things that we must do to have a higher rate of success when we're broadcasting these plots, because we're not going to go in here and diss this. This took us all summer to grow these soybeans. Nobody wants to come in here with a drill or a disc and run all this over. If you hit it with a disc or a drill, most of the time those are on 7.5 inch rows. What that means is you've got a no-till coulter running every 7.5 inches. So we're going to take out a tremendous amount of forage here that we've already grown. Why would we do that? If we was going to do that, we wouldn't just plant the beans to begin with, because if we plant this with a no-till drill or disc this up, we're not going to have any soybeans left to speak of. So we might as well have saved the money and not plant the soybeans to begin with. But now all of a sudden we've got a high quality food plot. We're going to have some beans in the actual pods, and we're going to add our fall mix to this that's going to make this more desirable over a longer period of time. And that's so key in these whitetail food plots, is planting a plot that has more benefits to whitetails over a longer period of time. And the only way to do that is to do some mixes. Okay, any monocrop that you plant, corn, soybeans, clover, there's going to be a time and a period where the whitetails aren't hitting that crop. Every year it happens. Doesn't matter what you plant. The more things that you have out here, the more desirable this food plot becomes over a longer period of time. It's very similar to what we say is a buffet. Okay, so we go to a buffet, now we don't want fish, now we want steak. Well, there's steak there. Same way with the deer. They may come out here, don't want soybeans tonight, but they want the radishes. May not want the radishes, they may want the clovers. So we're trying to stay with them over a longer period of time and keep these mature whitetails on our property. By planting a mix, we are keeping them over a longer period of time. We are trying to encourage them to spend as much time in our food plots where A, we have a chance to harvest them, and B, the neighbors that we cannot control have less chances of harvesting them. So we are advancing bucks to that older age class by keeping more food over a longer period of time on our hunting farms. I have planted fall food plot mixtures for many, many years, and I've really done well with them. I've broadcasted into corn, I've broadcasted into soybeans, and then the plots that I don't have anything planted right now, I will simply broadcast this fall food plot mix into a field that is fallow right now, that's not being used for anything. And I will get a good stand of my fall food plot mix, and all of a sudden that will become more attractive. But if we can mix this with a corn and soybeans, that's where I have found this plot does the very best. And I think it's just like what I went over earlier. Over a longer period of time, this plot is more attracted to whitetails. That is one reason that I'm not a huge fan of the mixes, is because I love planting corn, because I've seen the power of a corn food plot. It's unbelievable how strong of a pull a standing corn food plot has. In my opinion, it is the most preferred food source over the longest period of time, especially late, but especially early as well. When it's harvested, man, these deer absolutely flock to a cornfield. Many of us know that is when we're hunting whitetails in the fall, we're looking for harvested crop fields to scout in. Why are we looking there? Because that's where they're at. They love that corn, and we are providing over a longer period of time when we mix this fall food plot with that standing corn food plot. What we're gonna do is we'll come in here in the next 2 to 3 weeks and we will simply broadcast this mixture into these standing beans. That way we are not ruining these beans whatsoever, and there is plenty of sunlight for these crops to be able to start growing in and amongst this stuff. When these soybeans start turning yellow in the fall months, our fall food plot mix will still be bright green, and then we've got a lot more food in this plot than what we would have if we just left it in soybeans. Then we just got a few soybeans around, which is nothing wrong with that, but let's add to it. Let's get the maximum attraction that we possibly can. So we'll come in here in 2 to 3 weeks and we will simply broadcast in and amongst these soybeans right before a good rain event. It's literally just as simple as that. I've got 2 or 3 days of rain coming, 70–80% chance of rain. I'm gonna go ahead and broadcast this in. In this fall plot, I'm looking for 60 to 90 days before a frost. That's the goal that I'm shooting for. I really don't like the 60. I'd really rather be in the 75 to 90 day range before your average first frost while planting these food plots. Many of you are asking about fertilizers. These soybeans were fertilized this spring, okay? So P&K is in good shape. We all know that soybeans, any legume's going to fix its own nitrogen. So with a plot like soybeans, we're gonna get 40 to 60 pounds of leftover nitrogen. For something like cereal grains, we're looking at somewhere between 30 and 50 pounds of nitrogen. So with cereal grains, we do not need to add anything whatsoever to this plot. The soybeans are gonna supply the nitrogen for us. It's a free plot. Now, for something like brassicas, turnips, radishes, kale, things like that, likely we are not going to have enough fertilizer here to be able to raise these food plots. So what we're looking at is we're gonna add in about 50 pounds an acre. We should have 40 to 60 out here. We'll throw another 50 down and we should be in that 90 to 110 range, roughly somewhere in there. That should be plenty enough to raise our brassicas to get them that good bulb production that we're looking for. If we didn't have a good stand of soybeans, because a lot of us don't. I've got many plots where the soybeans did not make anything. They're still there, but they are not nearly the size of these right here. What are we doing on those? That is going to be a little bit more tricky because it really never got into fixing a tremendous amount of nitrogen because the deer kept that 8 down. What I'm going to do in my plots in that situation, I'm going to go ahead and apply a full rate of nitrogen. Phosphorus and potassium should be okay from the spring application, but the nitrogen is not something that I want to mess around with. It's not a lot of fun to come out here late September, early October, right before you're hunting, and your trail camera starts showing a lot of yellow brassicas out here. That's not a lot of fun because now all of a sudden we're left with a scenario. What do? Do we go out there and throw a bunch of nitrogen on it? We spread our human scent around. We're gonna burn a lot of the leaves off. That nitrogen is gonna be sticking to those leaves and it's gonna burn holes through them. It's not gonna kill it. I would rather put that on either 2 or 3 days before planting or when the plants are little bitty and they're just getting going. That's when I would prefer to add my nitrogen down, preferably before a good rain event. That limits the amount of nitrogen volatilization that happens. So for plots that don't have these, I'm adding a full rate of nitrogen. So if I'm putting cereal grains in, I'm adding 40 to 50 pounds of nitrogen. If I'm doing a brassica blend, I'm gonna up that to around 90 to 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre. If you're throwing it in a corn crop, and you follow my fertility guide, I recommend around 175 pounds of nitrogen out there. You're sowing your brassicas and your cereal rye into a spot that the deer have cleaned up a little bit, okay? That they have kind of wiped out between the deer and the coons. We always have those areas where it's a little more open. They kind of ruin that crop during the summertime a little bit. On those spots, I'm not putting anything. We're simply broadcasting down. There should be a good enough amount of fertilizer to get that crop raised there without having to add a tremendous amount of fertilizer to it. I always want to watch those plots when I'm not putting fertilizer and have a bag of urea just in case, because the worst thing that could happen is that plant starts yellowing, the growth's really going to slow down and stop. So if we can keep that dark green growth, we know that that plant has plenty of nitrogen that it is tapping into and it doesn't need any more. So this is kind of a give and take. This will change between how much rain you got this summer versus how little you got. If you got a tremendous amount of rain this summer and you grew something like corn and you put 150 pounds down, you're likely going to have to add pretty much a full rate to a brassica plot that you're interseeding into it, because that rain washes a lot of that nitrogen away. And if that corn got a lot of rain over the summer, then guess what? It's going to make more. It's going to have a bigger ear, the plants are going to be bigger, and it's going to tap into more of that nitrogen, to where if we have a small crop and we say we only make 50 bushel per acre corn, there's going to be a lot of leftover nitrogen there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Y'all smash that like and subscribe button.